Live. My name is Heidi, and I'm the Community Outreach Coordinator at Politics and Prose, and I have the pleasure of hosting our event this evening. Thank you for joining us and tuning into this format where we continue to bring authors and new books to you. I am pleased to welcome our guest this evening, Mr. Ben Hatke. You can buy your copy of Ben's book, Julia's House Moves On, by clicking on the link in the chat box. We have adorable signed book plates that go with the purchased book, so you want to grab those. If you have a question for Ben, you can click the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen and add one there. At the end of the chat, Ben will have time to answer some of your questions. You can also vote on questions you like and want most answered. Now onto the event you're waiting for. Ben Hatke is the author of the New York Times bestselling Zeta the Space Girl trilogy, the Mighty Jack series, and the Eisner Award-winning Little Robot. His books have a focus on strong female characters. He lives and works in the Shenandoah Valley with his wife and daughters. He loves archery and is very happy to be in a canoe. And now I will turn the event over to him.
Hello, am I on? This is great. Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody who I can't see. Welcome to my little studio on this rainy day. It's turned into a very gray and rainy evening, but I'm very, very happy to be here with you. This is the first, I've got to say, this is the first like a virtual, I think it's the first virtual event that I've really ever done. I've done like a Skype school visit before, but this is the first kind of thing where it's been, where in a normal time I would be in not just a bookstore, but truly one of my favorite bookstores, which is Politics and Prose, which is where I even did my very first book signing, not really, almost 10 years ago. Was it? Yeah, 9 or 10 years ago, when 2011, 2012, when Zeta the Space Girl came out, and I was so nervous. I was so nervous to go for the first time in front of people and be talking to them about a book that I had made and answering questions and all this. And that went, it ended up going so well. And everybody there was so welcoming. Everybody at Politics and Prose was so welcoming. And I was so proud. I was as nervous for this event as I was for that one, for vastly different reasons. Mostly because I don't trust technology. I'm nervous even now that something is going to go wrong or that I am talking and you can't hear me. I hope you can. But yeah, so this is a very different book release day for me. But I had a couple things planned that I wanted to do. And the first of them was I actually just thought it would be fun. I have not yet read this book aloud to anyone, and so not at all, not to anyone. I think I've signed like in person, like signed maybe 3 copies for friends who've come by. So I've not read this book in person to anyone yet, and so you here sitting at your homes and you know, tuning in. You're going to be the first people that I've ever gotten to read this book aloud to. And then after that, I thought maybe I would, this is my studio. I work in a very, very small space, but I thought I'd give you a tiny, tiny tour. And I will try to just kind of flip the screen, show around just a few of the things in my studio, talk just a little bit about sketchbooks and having a good bookshelf. I'll show you, well, just a little bit of the things I'm working on. But in the meantime, oh, and then we have like I can really get talking with questions, and I can actually even have like question activities, a question activity we can do. But to start out, let me read to you, and we tried to do this with screen sharing, but I think we came up with just this being the best way to do it. And I hope on my screen this looks reversed. I hope that on your screens it looks correct. I hope it looks. I hope the words are reading left to right. So here we go. This is Julia's house moves on. It's going to be hard to read this without talking about the ideas behind it. Picture books take many drafts. I was looking through this at the beginning and thinking and realizing how many drafts this book went through. I considered starting this by showing you guys the first draft of the book. And I went back and looked at the first draft of the book, and I was just too embarrassed to share it. It was so rough that I as much as I'm a fan of making sure that people know that projects go through drafts and they get better and better as they go, or you have to work through a lot of rougher versions of something before you get to a final version. But one of the joys of working through rougher versions of something before you get to the final version is that you never have to show those bad versions to anybody. And I thought about it today, and then I decided, no, thank you. So this story begins. This is a story about moving. It's a story about what you can take with you and what you leave behind. And it's a story about making plans and then maybe those plans not going the way you thought, and trying to make things up as you go. So we start out with an overturned flower pot and some dirt coming out of it. And then here we have Julia's house moves on. And the first creature we see is this little crawling piece of sod. Julia's house moves on. It goes crawling across towards Julia's house. The area of Julia's house is this area where the turtle is based on a little town in Northern California, a seaside town that we visited once. And I've always thought of it. But as you see now, there is a bridge being built on the way to Julia's house. So things are getting a little bit more crowded. Here comes Julia down her stairs. Down the stairs to her mailbox. In the first book, she plants her mailbox when her town comes to town, or when her house comes to town. In this one, she pulls her mailbox out. And I have no idea why her mailbox has a pencil bottom to it. That was a new addition to the idea of Julia, and I liked it. And here she finds this little creature. This little creature is, by the way, it only mentions it once in the book. It's a gilly. It's my version of a gilly, which is like a gilly-doo, a Scottish little woodland fairy. And I've kind of done my own version, which is less human looking and more creaturely. So here we go. Julia's house was for lost creatures of every kind. And okay. I never know how to read stories aloud without telling stories about the stories. There were a lot of things happened while I was working on this book. This picture you see here was one of the first things that happened in the journey of this book. It was a night a little bit like this. It was early spring, and it was mid-spring. It was like June, maybe, I guess. And there was a thunderstorm. And I was on my own with my daughters, and I thought, well, I'll just put the dog, we had a dog, he was younger, and I thought, well, I'll just put him in my studio for a minute while I go deal with this thing. And a thunderstorm came up, and he got so afraid that he took this illustration off my desk and ate it. I found the pieces, and there were certain pieces that I didn't find, which he clearly ingested. So, this is the second version of this picture that I did. I had to redo this picture because the dog actually ate my homework. Okay, here we go. Julie's house was for lost creatures of every kind, but the house was getting restless. It was time to move. It was time to move on. Everyone could feel it. The goblins were getting, I can't read this backwards. The goblins were getting cranky and full of mischief. The mermaid spent her days in languid sighs. The ghost had faded, and the trolls just stared out the window while reciting poems. Yes, it was time to move on. I have a plan for this, said Julia. She really did. Books were packed, boxes stacked. She had a nice spot picked out in the mountains. But then, the house started moving on its own. And one thing you can see here is there's Goblin from Nobody Likes a Goblin. And there's Robot from Little Robot. And this teapot has been in my house. This teapot is loosely based on a teapot that's been in my house for probably about 20 years. Hey, shouted Julia. Where are you going? This wasn't part of the plan. But the turtle didn't care about the plan. Oh, I gotta open this up a little bit more. Sploosh. Not at all. And you see, unfortunately, the turtle has fallen in love, which always makes things go wrong. It's a terribly negative view. There he goes. So it's like a box turtle, and he's found this sea turtle under the waves. And of course, in Julia's world, there's always a few mermaids swimming about. The tattered remains of Julia's house drifted on a lonely sea. Things looked bleak. The creatures sloshed about in the water, and they looked to Julia. Don't worry, she said. I have a plan for this. She really did. Kick, shouted Julia. Faster! The creatures kicked as fast as they could, and the house listed dangerously to one side. And then the goblins spotted fins circling in the water. The creatures scrambled back on board. The house was sinking faster. Don't worry, Julia called. I have a plan for this. She ran to her workshop. She tore through her boxes. She sounded Triton's horn. This was a very fun page to draw. I actually remember clearly drawing this page. Wow, it's a good memory. It's just like a beautiful summer day. And I was sitting there, and there are times when you're sitting at your desk and you're drawing in the middle of an illustration and it's going kind of okay. And you think, this is great. When the krakens sank below the waves, things were worse than ever. The creatures looked to one another. I can make a plan for this, whispered Julia. Julia ran to her workshop. But when she emerged, the creatures were paddling to the horizon. Julia was alone with her plan. Julia stared out over the lonely sea. She opened her hand and watched her plans float away on the wind. But then, the sea erupted in light and song. Everybody's back. The queen of the sea lifted Julia's house up out of the water. The creatures were all there. We have a plan for this, they said. They really did. The goblins hammered and the robots wired. The ghost collected sheets and blankets. And the gilly grew and grew and grew until off they go. Oops, sorry. Okay. Here's Julia at sort of the prow of her house. Julia's house set a course through the clouds. The way ahead was uncertain, And it was anyone's guess where they would land. Julia was all out of plans. And that was okay. And there she goes, looking to her horizon. The end. And that is Julia's House Moves On. So, thank you for listening, first of all. I thought I would give you guys a quick, just the quickest of tours of this tiny, tiny space where I work every day. And then we can get to stories and questions and all these things. So I'm going to try. Let me see here. I'm going to try to. Oh, I didn't experiment with. Oh, switch camera. Okay, here we go. Are you guys ready? All right. So here we go. I have my iPad balanced on this chair. Behind the chair, now that it's becoming winter time, this is my little tiny wood stove. In the winter time, I have a little tiny fire in here every day, and that's what keeps me warm. And when I come out, like I have to relight the fire every morning. So when I come out, I actually even throw a little incense on it, which I hope makes the studio smell nice, and it's kind of baked up into the wood above. Here is my bookshelf. Hanging on the corner of my bookshelf is my arrows. The top of my bookshelf is dedicated to comics. The middle is to inspirational books that I very much love. You can see far over on the left side, that red book is The Three Musketeers. Super, super important to me. Far over on the right side is am I there? Oh, there we go. Is Prince Adam. It was a very important character in my life growing up. Then comes my shelf full of sort of art and art history and art books that I either take out when I need inspiration or just read. It's good to have a good collection of this. Finally, the bottom level is some of the sketchbooks that I've filled up over the past couple of years. I'm really think sketchbooking and like filling those sketchbooks is important. I think that's, for me, it's really the most important part of the process. Then we have my light table, some paintings. It's really such a small space. Over here, and there's the house. Over here we have, this is a shelf full of other language translations of the books. My umbrella, various odds and ends. This is a huge, this is a chalk drawing, a charcoal drawing of a mural that I'm working on. And then the mural itself still lies unfinished next to my desk with all the art, or some of the art, some of the sketches from Julia 3, which I just turned in, still pasted up next to me. And there we go. And then we have this very important part of the studio is my hats. The different hats. You can put on a different hat for every mood that you're in, for the different moods that you're in. Some adventure gear, some arrows, masks, foxtails, and finally, oh, and very quickly, my door with its TARDIS telephone box sign. So my idea for this was that any space where you're creating stories really is bigger on the inside because you're creating whole worlds. That's the hope anyway. And then finally, this is my loft. And my loft is where, oh, you see my bows. My loft is where I write, especially in the wintertime when the chimney gets nice and warm, I can put my back up against it and I can write up there. These days, currently the loft is mostly used by the girls as a space to read comics and play video games, by my daughters. So I'm trying to switch screen back. There we go. So anyway, that is my, oh, and behind me is my desk, and that's where that's where I am for most of the day. So that is, that's my little space. And I thought now that I would turn it over to you guys to do, tell stories and ask questions. Hi, do you want me to do one of the grab bag questions first?
Yeah, let's do that first. Let's start with that.
Okay, so
let me
I have this set of questions that I printed up, and these are a few years ago. I was on tour, and which book was it? It was for maybe the third Zeta book, I think. And one stop on the tour, it was an in-conversation tour where I could get to talk to various different authors and be in conversation with them. And I got to talk to Ryan North, who is the author of just a host of wonderful books. And we cooked up this idea of having sort of like some questions in a hat. So if kids at the event didn't know kind of what question they might want to ask, they could just draw a question from the hat. And I thought, well, this is a great idea. And so I printed up these questions that we came up with then. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to ask the first question.
Perfect.
But if you guys want, you can, if you want to submit, you can just submit grab bag question, and I will try more of these. So I'm going to roll this 20-sided die. These are, if you know anything about me, you know that 20-sided die are very important to me. They're a link to one of the things I love, which is Dungeons and Dragons. And since there are 19 of these, but we'll just, if I roll a 20, I'll just re-roll. It won't be a critical hit. Here we go. So I roll a 7. So I'm going to go down and I'm going to get question number 7. Okay, question number 7 is, what would your dream job be in space? That is a good question. There are 2 answers to this question, I think. The real answer to the question would probably be that I would like to be a ship's artist in space. I just like to do kind of my own job in space, where where they used to have like naturalist artists on ships, right? Yeah. I would like to travel in space, port to port, world to world, documenting what all is going on, as sort of the resident artist for a ship. That would be probably like, because I'd probably just take my same skill set and apply it to, you know, a space setting, which sounds really fun. The other answer to this question is that I actually think about this a lot. When I can't sleep, when I'm having trouble sleeping, I have 2 or 3 imaginary locations that I go to and do. It's my version of sort of counting sheep. So I do very, like, I know these, like they exist in my mind as very like fleshed out locations, and they're almost real. And one of them, and will do repetitive work in these locations, and then I'll just go to sleep. But one of them is a space station, really, really far out, and like circling a gas giant planet in some other solar system. And it's just a space dock, and I have a job there, mostly doing like riveting work. And it's so real in my mind. And sometimes if I'm off work, I'll go and sit on this like catwalk, this like metal catwalk, and just look out at the stars. And like just doing that in my mind really puts me to sleep really easily. So it already feels so homey that if that was real, I would choose that one.
Awesome.
That's a long-winded answer for a grab bag question.
Okay. We do have a lot of questions though, so do you want to?
Oh, we have a lot of questions already. Okay.
We have over 30 questions so far, 35 right now. So
35 questions already.
Yeah,
okay. Wow.
Yeah. And people can still go in and ask questions. We might not get to everything. We're going to try our best.
Okay.
But there are
the volume
a lot of
way
questions.
Up so I can hear.
Okay.
I had
so
no idea there would be so many questions. That's amazing.
Yeah. And people can also vote on the questions they want most answered. So that's also a way to get involved. Okay.
Wait, we can vote on the questions we want most answered?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Should we get going?
Yeah, let's get going.
Okay. Our first question is from Mike Road. And Mike says, Ben, where did you get those sneakers?
Oh, I got them online. I just typed in like pink Converse sneakers. I had a hard time choosing between, what were there was a lighter pink and a slightly, I forget what it's called. It starts with a P. It's a flower.
Petunia?
Was that it?
Petunia?
That might have been it.
Peony?
Peony. These are peony. These are peony. The other one was a slightly earthier pink, and I didn't like it as much. It's thrilling how many colors of Converse All-Stars you can find.
Those are awesome.
I loved it.
They're Julia sneakers, right?
Yes, they're absolutely Julia sneakers, and like I never like. It's surprising that it took me this long to think of getting my own pair, but I'm very happy I did, and they're very comfortable. I've had a pair of these in high school, which was a long time ago, and they're as comfortable as I remember.
Awesome, nice. All right, let's go on to our next question. And this is from RCA, and he or she writes, "But what happens to the amorous turtles?"
That is a good question. Right. I wonder if, I imagine, well, they're pretty different. I wonder if it works out for them. I don't know, because it's a box turtle and a sea turtle.
Yeah.
And I feel like if they find an island somewhere where the sea turtle can be out at sea enough and the box turtle can crawl around enough, I think they'll be okay.
I'll make it work.
Yeah, but you never know with turtles. That's kind of one of the sayings of life, isn't it? You never know with turtles.
What about the turtles? Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Great. All right. This one is from Liz Todd. And she says, "Are there other books around that kids can read to enter magical worlds like in your books? Stories with goblins, trolls, mermaids, gillies, and such. Do you have favorites?"
No, I'm pretty much the only game in town in terms of, fantasy and other worlds. So
yes,
yeah, I'm sorry. No, so many. Oh my gosh, there's so many. I don't know. Oh man, I always neglect to come with a list of favorite books, and I don't know if I should focus on picture books or like prose books. Two favorites that immediately come to mind. One favorite that comes to mind with picture books is Sam and Dave Dig a Hole.
Mm-hmm.
That's a fantastic book, and that book, like, that's one of the books, that and Extra Yarn are two books that I feel like I look at and I'm like, oh, that's how you do it. That's how you make a picture book. And then there is, I get a lot of mileage out of, I think about books that I've reread a lot. Neil Gaiman's Graveyard Book is fantastic. I had to warn my daughters. They had to explain to them that, your father is going to cry when he gets to the end of this book, and that's just how it is. We know that he cries at the beginning of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and at the end of the Graveyard Book. That's just what happens, and they're totally understanding. Another book that's a family favorite in this house is The Animal Family by Randall Jarrell, and that's just it's a sort of I feel like it's a lesser known book, but it's illustrated or decorated by Maurice Sendak. He's done some just gorgeous, and it says decorated because you never see the characters in his pictures. Mm-hmm. It's just sort of it's decorations. It's stuff that sets the mood, but doesn't give you much more than that. And it's about a hunter who lives alone on the shore, seaside, or an island. You're never quite sure, I don't think. But there's a deep woods behind him, and he lives on the shore, and it's so beautifully told. And then he finds this mermaid, and I mean, if you read it, I think you'll see like why I would like it, because it's got a lot of these things that I keep humming on, because it's basically a build your own family book.
Yeah.
Which I always seem to like. Like, I noticed that I do that with like Nobody Likes a Goblin and Julia's House, where it's just like, let's take a bunch of misfits and make a family. Like that's the Muppet. Yeah, and that's the Muppet movie, right? That's
true.
I just love it. I love like weirdos banding together and making a family.
Yeah.
Out of that. So those are three. Gosh, there's just so many. I feel like we're also living in a time that when there's a lot of that. A lot to choose from and a lot of good stuff, but also just that sometimes there's so much. Once you start looking, you're like, how do I find my the thing that really, really speaks to my heart, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. You have to go to a bookstore and look around.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to the next one. This is from Gavin Feldman, and he says, so excited to be here. What was your inspiration for Julia's house?
Oh, hi, Gavin. I think I heard from you over email not too long ago. Okay, so Julia's house was Julia's house, and I have my other book, Little Robot. Let me just. Oh shoot! This is like this is not an English edition. Here we go. So Julia's house and Little Robot used to be. So this is the Scholastic edition of Little Robot. It's like a very young reader graphic novel about a little girl who finds a robot, and it's sort of about friendship and I don't want to go too much into it, but it's about a friendship between a girl and a robot. And Julia and Little Robot started almost kind of as the same story. I'm trying to remember how it all went, because for a while Julia's house and Little Robot were in the same world, and it was about this girl, Julia, who lived in a house by the sea, who walked down to the seaside and found a robot. And it was like two stories. It was the story of how the robot got there washed up on the shore, and the story of her, and it was too much.
Yeah.
And so those got pulled apart. I think actually before that, though, when Julia was still a picture book, my first version of Julia as a picture book was called Julia and Her Lion. And that is so different. And it was this very self-confident girl standing on top of a lion, our arms akimbo, and it was fun that way. I still like to look back on those sketches, and that makes me think, whenever I look back at that sketch, it makes me think like of how much a book can change from initial inception to what it becomes. And it makes me also remember like the story of, if you look up online, you can find pictures of this, Where the Wild Things Are was originally Where the Wild Horses Are. Wow. And Maurice Sendak in interviews will talk about this. And he says, I think just mostly self-effacingly, like I found out that I couldn't draw horses, and what I could draw was things. And which makes partial sense, but I think it also, like, you make a version of a book, and you just have to let it sit and develop and change. And Julia and Her Lion was like, I had a sense of that being a fun book, but it just, you just like it's a weird process, writing a story and also letting the story kind of take a life and of its own and develop as it goes. And then the only other part I would say about the inspiration for Julia is Julia herself as a character is a little bit of a mashup of my own daughter Julia, and also my mom a little bit. And then, like every character, there's a little bit of me in there. But my mom specifically, because she has lots of grandchildren now, and she very much likes to bring all the wild creatures into her house, but she also, the disorder could stress her out a bit. And so that tension, I think, is really fun. And I'll bet my mom's listening to this right now. I just realized that. I think the tension of that is very fun, though. And so it does well, yeah. And Julia, my Julia, is a little bit like Julia as well. So she always has a plan.
It's okay to let plans go sometimes too, is what we learned.
That's another thing. Like, I feel like the Julia books are all about these tensions, whether it's like having a house full of fantastic creatures, and then also how do you all live together, or the tension of I have a plan but plans don't work. All stories, you have to find a central tension to them, but like the Julia ones kind of work out. Anyway.
Okay, let's go on to the next one. This is from Terry Myers, and the question is, the dragon in the book, isn't that Felix from Mighty Jack?
No, they just, like, I feel like that's just how I draw dragons. The dragon in the Julia book is, has no wings, has no legs, is very much similar in the head, very much related. I think about that a lot too, but this dragon is, like, the dragon in the Julia book, I feel like is an older kind of more lost dragon than I think Felix is. But they're definitely similar, and they're definitely like I think that big horn structure on dragons is what they look like in my head, I guess. I don't know. Yeah. So good question.
Yeah. So this question is submitted by Sherry Khan, but it looks like it's from Eman, who's 8 years old, from Chicago. And they wrote, "Hi, Ben. Julie is my favorite character. Thank you for creating her." He wanted to know if Julie was based on somebody you already know, but you talked about that. But I just wanted to give a shout out to Eamon because that's fun. The next question is from Margaret, and she asks, "What fairy tale creature was your favorite when you were a child?"
Wow. That's a tough one.
It's hard to pick one.
It's hard to pick one. It's hard to pick one because it's hard for me to separate out fairy tale creatures from the books I read and fantasy stuff, right? Like I still have this book, this gnomes book on my shelf. So here are two books that I really liked growing up and still have on my shelf. And one of them you guys probably remember is Gnomes. I would check this out of the library all the time and pour through it. The art is fantastic. I don't think I really connected to the gnomes. I just think as much as I just looked at it and was like, I would like to make a book like that, right?
Yeah.
The other one is Fairies by Brian Froud and Alan Lee. That's another super duper classic. And so I think that's partly where I get my love of goblins, because Brian Froud, designed the goblins for Labyrinth and stuff like that.
Yes.
Oh man, one of the greatest thrills was Comic-Con a few years back when he was signing at a table nearby, and my friend Zach and I were signing our comics for people. They were like, should we go over and say and give them our books and say hi? And I drew a little comic myself about it where we're like little Ben and little Zach being like, "Mr. Froud, here's our books." So that was fun. I don't know what my favorite would be. I've always loved trolls. I've always loved but that goes back to The Hobbit, right? Like I really latched onto the trolls in The Hobbit and how the idea of being able to walk through a forest and seeing big piles of stone and thinking like, yeah, that used to be a troll. That was one.
Yeah, got light.
Yeah. So I guess that would be the answer.
Okay. Just a quick time check. We probably have time for maybe 2 more questions. So
2 more questions.
I know it's hard. So again, if you want to vote on ones, I'm just going to take the top ones we have here. So the next question is from Beck Snyder. "Do you have any new chapter books that you are writing, and how many books do you think you will write?" This is from Koa, age 9.
And how many books do I think I will write? I am going, I've thought about that before. My standard answer to that is I'm going to keep making books until somebody stops me. Until somebody says, no, Ben, you're done. That's, you're finished. Please stop. I am currently, I'm currently working on, so I've turned the Julia 3 in, and the next thing I'm supposed to be doing is re-editing a young adult graphic or a young adult prose novel that I've been working on. So that's a chapter book. That's got chapters. I'm really enjoying picture books in general. They're so fun to illustrate. I'm really enjoying prose. I do have a couple comics projects that are probably coming up. So I don't know. I'm not working on any middle grade chapter books right now, which is too bad. I do like the idea of it though.
There's time.
There's time, I hope.
Let's see. Are there any plans for a sequel to Nobody Likes a Goblin?
No.
From Mark.
There aren't. No. Like, I would like there to be. But that's one that Nobody Likes a Goblin is the book that I think turned into that's my favorite book right now to read aloud. And I feel like that's a book where I figured out picture books. And I'm a little bit precious about it in terms of like, it's really hard. It's like, sometimes you like, yeah. I had a hard time writing a book after Zeta because I liked where I left the characters. And sometimes it's hard, like, to go back and be like, no, let's like, I liked where I left them off. I was happy with that ending, right? And if you're happy with an ending, I don't know. It's hard to, like, I'm pleased with how that book turned out, and I like, it would be difficult to figure out, like, I'd be nervous about making a second one that it wouldn't add enough to the world, if that makes sense. So, but it was one of the best picture book creating experiences that I had. So, I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. Yeah. I love that. I love taking the D&D world and being like, what's my visual version? What's my personal visual version of that kind of world? Yeah. And so there would be like a temptation to just keep on drawing that. I do like that. So
awesome. Let's see. Oh gosh, we have so many good questions. Oh my gosh. Let's see. Okay, I'm gonna take.
You want me to roll is there an excuse to roll a dice? I could roll dice and tell you, and you could just pick. Like, look at a list.
There's one more. Let's do one more here, and then we'll end on your grab.
Oh, I would pick for my thing. I just was like, looking for if your list that you're looking at is numbered.
No, it's not numbered, but
okay,
there's
just pick just pick two good ones then. Just
okay.
Pick two good.
This one got some votes. This is from Diana Lee. And the question is, my 7-year-old is obsessed with everything you do, which is fair because so am I. We're all D&D fans too, so we love Goblin. She wants to know how old your girls are and how they feel about Zeta, and has a corollary, which characters are their favorites across your work?
Oh, that's a good question. Wait, okay, so can you read the first part of the question again?
Yeah, she wants to know about which characters are your girls' favorite characters?
Which characters are the girls' favorite? Yeah. Okay, so we in the house we have Angelica, Zeta, Julia, and Ronia, and Angelica is the eldest, and I had a story. It's so odd because, like, I have a Zeta in my house, I have a Julia in my house. Ronia is named for Ronia the Robber's Daughter, Astrid Lindgren book, which is my wife's favorite book, and it's up there for me too. And I also secretly, the name of the girl in Little Robot is never mentioned, but it's understood in our family that her name is Ronia.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and then so they all sort of have a namesake, except Angelica. Like, I had intended to kind of, like, she doesn't mind, but I had worked for some years on a book of Angelica with Wings. That's what, like, the working title of it was, that, for a long time. And then I learned that, like, not every book comes together, or maybe has yet, but I did drafts and drafts of it, and it was just like, it was getting there, but it never took off, like, right? It's like,
yeah, it happens.
But you know, like, it still exists and it's still there. I don't know who their favorites are. I think it's different for all of them. I was really, really touched one year when my daughter Zeta took it upon herself to make a Zeta costume. Because I've always been nervous that, like, I don't know, just having the character, sharing the name with the character, or the character sharing the name with her, would, I don't know, in some way feel funny to her. But, like, it seems to have gone very, very, very well. And the year that she made herself a Zeta costume, I was just like, I can't believe it. It's so great.
Yeah.
And it was a good Zeta costume. I was so impressed. So yeah, so it's fun. It's such a weird thing to like when I get my copies of a book, like the first book I open up and I write like Hatke family copy on, and I put it in the house.
Nice.
It's so weird to see your kids reading like the book that you made, and I don't know, it's good.
Very cool too. We are unfortunately out of time. I'm so sad.
Oh.
So many great questions here. I'm sorry to everybody who we didn't, get to your question. There were some really good ones there. But Ben, thank you so much. Is there before we close out, or any last words that you want to share with the audience? I
just want to say thanks to everybody for being interested enough to tune in.
Yeah.
For letting me read my book to you, or allowing me to read my book aloud to you. I don't, this work is work that you do quietly and alone. Yeah. And I do look forward actually to going out and sharing the work, because you can forget that part of it. Yeah. So it's really nice that it's really affirming that, people showed up and asked so many questions, and I'm sorry that we couldn't go on to get to them all, but yeah. Thank you very much. Please keep tuning in, and hopefully one day we'll be back to visiting bookstores in person.
For Julia number 3, we'll be able to
do Julia number 3. Let's do this in person for Julia number 3. That's a good thought to end on.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story and just this wonderful, personal, dialogue that we were able to have in conversation. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
People can still buy your book. It's right there. Good. The link is in the chat box. You can get the wonderful book, and you can get the personalized, the really adorable book plate. So thank you for that. And people can follow us, the Children and Teens Department, on social media. And again, thanks everybody for coming, and thank you for being here, Ben. We really appreciate it. And everyone, keep reading widely and expanding your world, and reading about goblins and trolls and mermaids and
everything.
Everything.
Yeah.
Stay safe out there. Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye.